concerning this specific EP, would you gentlemen mind if we go track by track and even give like a surface level idea of what's going on lyrically and what was just going on creatively speaking for these songs?
Yeah.
Awesome. So let's go ahead then and go under the skin or something of Bestial, the self-titled EP, which is now available on all streaming platforms. And I myself am going to go ahead and pull it up on my Spotify. That way I can just keep track of or keep record of the track listing, keep track of the track listing. Oh boy, oh boy. So we dive into this EP. And again, I have yet to listen to the entirety of this EP, but I have every intention to. And boys, on another note, I did not know every song on this record or album or EP started with a C. That's very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. The first three songs all started with a C organically. So I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just gonna try and find a C word for each song and just keep it that way.
That's funny. That's funny. So as
Yeah.
we dive into it then, track one, we have Creation. What is going on here lyrically and what is going on here musically speaking? What was the thought process behind this track?
All right. So lyrically, it's like it's definitely like I wouldn't say anti-religious song, but it's basically that's what it's like. It's not so much very. It's not. I don't know how to describe it. It's just. It's basically a way of like saying that it's hard. It's always hard for me to like actually describe what I was thinking when I was writing it, but there's like lines in it like a sacrifice with eternal debt to pay. It's basically meaning like, yeah, you got Jesus was sacrificed for us, but now we're living in eternal debt to him, basically. So like even after
Ah,
we have to pay a debt to him regardless. So it's kind of like that's kind of what I was seeing about. It's kind of like how I that's not necessarily cool with me,
yeah.
basically. And
No,
then
right.
yeah,
Sorry. I wasn't meaning to
no,
interrupt you.
no, you're fine. I didn't really have much more to say. It's just yeah, it's mostly coming from that angle of like hypocrisy from religious people and like how they think they look down on people like me, but in reality, it's just we're all the same, basically.
Yeah. And I mean, that's very important a mindset to acknowledge because like when you first said like your first commentary, it's like we're just in eternal debt to him because he made a sacrifice thousands of years ago. I get very like petty, anti-religious, like Karen vibes from this. Just like, really? You expect us to do all this shit when he died on a cross thousands of years ago? I want to speak to your manager. I am the manager. I am God. You're like, fuck you, or whatever. It's definitely a mindset that I can get into as well. It's an ideology I can share because I don't even know, bro. Like Western monotheism, which is what I generalize it to, whether Christianity, Mormonism, Catholicism, just everything, bro, that has anything to do with the one omnipotent, omniscient God. Like there's a reason that I'm all about ignite the church and separation of church and state, or the return in today's age, apparently, to separation of church and state. It's the reason I'm not Republican politically speaking. It's the reason I'm not anything politically speaking, right? Because unfortunately, our country is still tied down religiously to Western monotheism, right? And
Yeah.
it's just so fucking toxic sometimes. And it's so annoying because you think of all these individuals that are so just certain. And I mean, like, good for them. They're confident in their path. But also, when you realize how brainwashed and sheepish some of these people can sound sometimes, just like, oh, it's all in the will of God, or even kids dying of cancer more than anything else in the modern age, and just like Christians or priests or whatever will mark it up to, it was the will of God, the child was being tested. And of Sulfur, their song Earthen asked, why would God test a child? Why does God need to test a child? And it really begs the question of how many criminal, evil acts in the world need to be just like, oh, it was the will of God. It was meant to be. All these
Yeah.
people were meant to be raped, murdered, and killed for no fucking reason. It was the will of God. I'm like, how? What?
Yeah.
Like, how deep fried freaking ramen straight out of the package noodle is your brain, bro? Like, that's not how the world should be. We shouldn't be so willing to accept these types of things. So, I definitely, not to get into that type of rant, but that stuff's important. Acknowledging how much religion and stuff like that can brainwash people, can influence people to just accept atrocities in the world. Shout out to Nithful, shout out to Of Sofer and all these other bands in the scene who are making that message very apparent. Like, why do we need to accept all these terrible things and attest it to the will of God? Like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Cut out the cancer, you know what I mean? So, track 2, Crusades.
Spend your life pushing yourself upon me. Turn back the clock to a place that I've forgotten. No need for sorry, you got what you want. Addicted to the fate of the martyr.
What is going on here lyrically?
That one's even more of like a scalpel to exactly what you were saying about separation of church and state. It was after the abortion thing with the
outlawed abortion
when they outlawed they outlawed Roe v. Wade, basically.
Yeah.
So it's like basically people pushing their beliefs on other people and believing that it's their godly duty to do so, but in reality it's just like this, it's America, like it was built on the separation of church and state, and I don't care what you believe, but you don't get to push your shit onto me.
Exactly, bro.
Me and make me believe the same way and make me live in a world where you get your way. Because if a lot of these people got their way, I think this country would be unrecognizable if a lot of people that believe that way got this way. And it just so happened that our release date happened to be a year after for this song, a year after the January 6th riots at the Capitol, because we were using that riot footage in our video as like background footage, and it just happened to come out on the 1 year or 2 year anniversary of that shit, and I just was like, holy fuck.
Which, for context, me and Tyler live in Missouri, specifically Southeast Missouri, and so we see a lot of the really, not to say that you have to think the way we do, obviously we're more left-leaning, but we see a lot of the really extreme side of that.
Yeah.
And I think that's where part of, at least for him, his lyrical side, we're bombarded with that shit constantly. So
Yeah.
it was kind of like a pushback to that.
Definitely a fuck you to people that think that they can talk to me in a certain way just because they are believers.
Yeah,
Right.
seriously. And it's really one of the more toxic mechanics and one of the most unproductive mechanics of society today is that slowly, bit by bit, it seems that the First Amendment is being dismantled. And like, politically speaking, I will say this on the podcast for the first time. I am anti-fucking Mason. Okay. So what that means is that's a party that predates most of the political parties today. And that is a party that exclusively opposed the Freemason Party, which was originally the Democratic Party at the very beginning. So the Democratic and Republican Party, they've switched over time.
Your audio dropped out.
Aha.
There you are.
There you go.
Okay. I don't know where I cut off, but I don't know, it predates most of those political parties, right? And literally, you look up the Freemason political party, the Democratic Freemasons or whatever. Most of the founding fathers are in that political party. And it predates everything, bro. But their main goal was to manipulate the press, manipulate any news. And that's what they're doing today. But, not to sound conspiracy or Joe Rogan as fuck, but it's kind of true, unfortunately. And it's happening everywhere. So
Yeah.
it's political atmosphere, right, and religious atmosphere, that obligation, that constriction, that suffocation to, oh, you need to be an evangelical Christian or Mormon or a Catholic or whatever in the United States, and that's why you would understand why they wanted Roe v. Wade overturned. I'm like, absolutely not, dude. Keep your religion out of the actual state laws. It has no place in state law, dude. You have no idea how many of these families literally either get raped into having a kid, or they're forced in, like, you know, more or less not raped, but forced into it. Those are other circumstances. Or they're even like obligated religiously. They're like, you can't kill that baby. You'd be killing a baby. You'd be killing a human being. It's like, but also, would you rather me be in financial debt because of religious viewpoint, or would you rather me take care of things early on and then have kids when I'm more financially ready? You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So
well, there's a line in the song that I say, in the end, they will come for you too, which is basically like, when they're done with me and the people that are totally against you, they'll come after the people that are the moderates of the Christian side too. They'll come for you next because you're not as Christian as them. You're not as them. So that's kind of part of what I was getting at.
Badass, dude. And it's always good to provide that type of what is it? Provide that type of attention to that topic. Bring awareness. There we go. Bring awareness to those unfortunate ideologies and stuff, just the toxicity that is Western monotheism here in the United States. Like, shout out to the Satanic Temple for fighting first in Texas against the state court or whatever it is to return us to where, you know, women have the right to abort if they wish to. That's absolutely what should be done. Track 3 would be Crawl.
So Crawl lyrically is just basically like anything that I have real like guilty conscience a lot, where it doesn't matter what I do, I could just say a joke and I feel like the whole world's gonna end and I'm gonna be, you know, like buried alive basically underneath like a weight of guilt. That's what it feels like. And that's kind of what the song's about. It's about basically benign stuff that I've done always plaguing me and like making me think that like one day I'm gonna have to suffer one day, because like I don't really believe in karma, but it's just kind of like this thing that's like all this stupid stuff that I've done over the years. It's like not even really that bad, but it'll all pile up and it'll bear me alive and stuff. So
and it'll force you to be like on your knees and break you down to a crawling point. I completely get that, dude. Because when it comes to situations like that, and I mean, I'm kind of the same way. So when it comes to just trying to be the best person you can be, any flaw, any failure, any mistake, any obstacle that you face in life, and you feel that you might have approached that the wrong way, or people later in life say, oh, you should have done it this way or that way. Every now and then I have that issue too. I have that absence of individuality and absence of self. And I kind of lose track that I don't want to live my life with regrets, and I'm not a shitty person. I haven't done nearly as bad or silly, right, or irresponsible as most of my other friends, just because I simply did not want that on my conscience later in life. So of course, the thing is though, as my own band name would suggest, we are all blind without our failures, which it's just blind without our failures, but we are all blind without our failures. Absolutely. Without our failures, without our flaws, without our insecurities, without our, for example, you know, maybe you're paraplegic or something, without those things in your life, you would be blind to the current timeline, the current lifetime that you are living, the current reality that you reside in. So definitely bringing awareness to that is important, because you can't look back and just keep regretting everything. Like, we all live in the past, sure, because every moment right now, even 1 second, that's the past. Like, boom, we all live in the past, or what we will understand later in life when we truly settle as the past. But it's important to realize that nobody is perfect. Some people are a lot shittier than others because they're like, oh, I have a mental condition that entices me to touch children or murder people for no fucking reason. Those people, their purpose is to remind us who not to be. And that's kind of always been my philosophy. Everybody has their purpose. Everybody has their flaws, but we would absolutely be blind without the failures and the losses that we have obtained and conquered throughout life, because you had to conquer them. So that's really good. Track 4, we have Circles. Which was my first song with this band.
Nice. I guess that one starts, he wrote this just fucking ripper of a riff. What were you thinking when you were wanting it to be like a thrashier style than some of the other stuff that we've done?
Yeah, very, very fast, very relentless. There's triplets all the way through. It's just constant galloping and not shredding, but constant, relentless from front to back.
Yeah. And my idea, when I first heard it, I thought of like being dragged down to hell, kind of. So that's like what Circles is.
Like the 7 circles.
Yeah, like that. So it's basically like you're not a lot of the words in it. It's like dragged down to the depths. You're just the same as me. It's basically like you're no fucking better than me. You know, that's you can put yourself on a pedestal, but you're coming to hell just with me, just like me. You know, basically like that.
Yeah, I definitely remember those lyrics because they definitely those are definitely repeating lines in the song. Yeah. So it's like, this is really what the song is about. Pay attention, bro. It works. Track 5, we have Consume. Like,
so Consume's kind of like, I feel like one of the weirder songs on the album, just because it kind of starts and stops. But it's like there's like the theme of it is kind of like watching someone be taken away by like the sirens, like in the like mythology sirens. That's kind of like the mythical text of it, but like the actual like literal stuff that I was talking about is like basically just watching someone get taken from like, whether it be like, you know, drug addiction or like, you know, you could have saved them by doing this, doing that, and about basically how
self-destruction,
yeah, and how you just watch someone self-destruct and how you feel kind of guilty about it and stuff like that.
Right. So like literally any addiction, any bad habit, watching it consume them, and there's like nothing you can do about it.
Yep.
Makes sense. Like we already did Circles and Consume. So now we kind of provide some closure by talking about the track Closure.
Don't know if I could live or understand why you had to leave this fucking way. I don't know if I could live or bring myself to forgive you for leaving me.
On this Bestial EP. So what's going on here? Obviously it's the ending track for the EP, but what else? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's about death in general, about losing someone to dying in general. There are some specific things that I'm drawing from, but it's not necessarily, a lot of it has to do with like, a lot of the themes is more like suicide related, but it can be used, and I used it as kind of like, some of the lines were like specific to what I was going through that wasn't suicide related, but could in the end be a cohesive song to where it could be about that. It could be about someone dying, you know, just naturally, you know, it's about the anger of losing someone and like the fact that you'll never get to see what they become and stuff like that, basically.
Right. And therefore closure, it kind of provides closure in open interpretation. It's one of those songs. It's written around something that happened to you, or maybe to a loved one, maybe to a friend, but
Yeah.
you also then think of maybe how worse it could be. You know what I mean? How certain people pass away, that kind of conquers, and it adds even more layers of intensity, grief, mourning, depression, and the stages of loss, right? The seven, I think like 6 or 7 stages of loss, maybe like 5. I forgot.
Yeah.
It's been such a long
Yeah.
time, but it's like it happens to everybody. But this song is meant to then be a departing gift for now from Bestial, saying it's difficult. We all go through loss,
Yeah.
and it can happen to anybody at any given point. It happens in different ways, and there are stages to the loss. So I mean, there you go. That's a great way to wrap up, I think, what is going to be a great first EP, a great first album from this tiny 2-person studio project that has honestly, again, been compared to here on the podcast to Hive, to Digora, and plenty of other just borderline genty, but also very dark and just bassy, groovy metalcore, deathcore, whatever you wish to call it, people. But this has been the Anatomy Podcast, and that will conclude the Under the Skin session.